All right, and we are live. Welcome to Iwards and Upwards.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ruby Slippers.
And I'm Ivan. I'm still good old Ivan. How are you, Ruby?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for not sneak attacking me by hitting the live button at a random moment from stage. I deeply appreciate that.
Yeah, I apologize. It was a stupid move last time. I'm not going to do that again.
No.
Yeah.
It was not that big a deal. You know, I just like to give you shit.
Yeah, I do know that. How are
Mm-hmm.
you? Hmm.
Okay. So you're getting into winter down there, aren't you? You know, we're starting to hit 90 degrees Fahrenheit here, so that puts it for the non-Fahrenheit speakers at about 35
25.
C. 35 C.
No, I'd say it's closer to about 25, 30, because I know that 100 degrees is. Ah, no,
I have a
you're right.
chart, and the
100
chart
degrees
says,
is closer to 40.
right, 104 Fahrenheit is 40 Celsius, 86
Uh-huh.
Fahrenheit is 30 Celsius. So that's why I'm spitballing 90-ish,
Gotcha.
somewhere in the 35 Celsius range.
Well, we recently had our first negative temperatures of the year, so yeah, sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. What's it like for
Um,
having, just out of curiosity, having
mhm,
grown up in the Northern Hemisphere and
mhm.
spent a lot of your time as an adult, you know, in North America? What's it like having the inversion of the seasons? I mean, I don't know that Christmas is particularly sentimental for you and your family, you know, regarding snow. Obviously, your daughter is so young, she's not known really anything else. What's that like to go from it's pretty effing snowy where you like lived as a
Yeah,
kid
yeah, yeah, yeah. And where I
versus,
worked, like when I was doing my ski seasons, yeah, I lived in the
oh,
snow
true.
for
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Ivan the
Um,
Snow Bunny.
yeah,
If anyone who finds this podcast, I'm not saying that we have any live listeners, but if any of you draw comics or are an illustrator for manga or anything like that, if you wouldn't mind drawing Ivan the Ski Bunny, I'd be happy for us to share that on Instagram. That would be fantastic. And I would laugh so much. Matt Al, where's Matt Al? He did that one of you,
uh-huh.
the portrait.
Hmm.
Matt Al,
Hmm. Hmm.
Ski Bunny.
That
I'm
that's
in.
the best one. Yeah, no, I miss the guy. Um, Hopefully we'll get to see him one day. Look, yeah, no, it took me a while to get used to like no snow at Christmas or New
Mm-hmm.
Year's, and for for a few years in the beginning, the entire like me and Yelena, both of us, we would be calling winter summer and summer winter, and because
Mm-hmm.
just like automatically like July
Yeah, the
summer,
calendar.
December
Mm-hmm.
winter, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Welsh one is here. Hey, brother, how are you?
Yay!
Yeah.
Well, and you know, since your daughter's grown up with a Southern Hemisphere, you know, experience, I remember as a kid when I was in a Central American country, and one of my first concerns at the age of, I think it was 6 when I first arrived there, was, Mom, like, there's no
Mhm.
fireplace. How's
Uh-huh.
Santa coming in? Like, also, since we're here, do we not to get to use the evergreen tree anymore? Do we use palm trees now since we're here? Is that how it's done? So I only ask from these deeply ingrained memories of concern.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you see, where I was from, you don't get anybody dropping down your chimney. Your Santa or Father Frost usually is knocking at your front door, drunk in the company of a young lady. So it's
Wow.
it didn't really matter
Wow.
whether it was summer or winter. But look, the matter of fact is that the now the tables have turned, and we are very used to the Kiwi lifestyle because we've been living here longer than the old country.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, it's weird the other way around. So Christmas, and it's not warm and it's not hot, is weird now. So it's yeah,
Okay.
we're
You've gone
we're at that
native.
stage. Yeah, no, we have adapted and
Well, and
assimilated.
that must and I haven't dug very deep. Obviously, we've had some announcements from the club, from Wrexham AFC, about their summer tours. I got to watch the replays of the women's Hong Kong 7 matches this morning. But when the Australia and New Zealand men's team tour for this summer were announced, my first thought was they are tired of Southern California in the dead of summer, and they're going to go someplace that's more within the climate of, being cooler, and Wales and what they're used to. But I guess maybe I read somewhere that Australia was, or maybe I heard Australia's the 3rd biggest market, which would make also great sense. But what a reward for folks who have, like yourself, even last season in the middle of the night, got up, every match. I'm so excited for the folks down there, and to hear from your last episode that you might be attempting to see them in Wellington.
Well, yeah, and the Welsh one in the chat, he's going. So he lives in the middle of the North Island. Yeah, and he's saying that he never got used to the backwards country. That's true, and I'm thinking that the guys, for the entire team, Wrexham AFC, they play in Wales and all around England, and they play through some horrible winter conditions. And then they have to come here, like they're going to be playing in Wellington. Wellington is a nice city, like being a capital city, it actually has a lot of good vibes about it, and it has a lot of good things about it. It's quite, it's based all around undulating terrain, so it's quite mountainous.
Oh, okay.
But it's the nickname is Windy Welly, so it's Windy Wellington.
So like Chicago.
Never been to Chicago, but it's right on the. No. I really want to go.
Lakes, I assume that you would have been there.
I know. I would really want to go see in all the sort of original 6 teams and whatnot. But the thing is that it's right on the tip of the bottom tip of the North Island. So you right on the Cook Strait. So your winds there are just like you get hammered, and even if you Google the billboard, it's like a Hollywood sign but made out of Wellington. So instead of obviously Hollywood, there would be Wellington. It's right on the mountain as well. So they kind of copied the Hollywood theme, but it's so made that half of the letters are blown away.
Oh no!
So you look at it and like the letters are flying away because it's the entire city. The entire city is famous for the wind, and
I know more than I did, because all I knew about Wellington really was the show Wellington Paranormal, which
right. The entire city of Wellington is all about wind, but you get some craziest landings in Wellington. Like the landings that I have experienced in Wellington.
Oh God, you're talking about planes.
Yeah.
No.
No other landings. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Good one.
I don't know what else there would be, but like I don't think folks knew that you went right into my current one of many concerns is air travel right now. America can't get it together right now.
Again, just go Google it, go on YouTube and watch some Wellington landings. They're literally planes landing like legit sideways, and 1-2 landing is a standard one, or touch and go is a standard one.
I bet Matt knows something about that, because he has followed and photographed by the air bases, air base near his home, so he might be in the know on that and might find that exciting, but just no.
Yeah.
No thanks. All right, so if I ever go down that way, I'm not flying into Wellington.
Well, on that, with the Welsh one, it's just saying Wellington is way better than Auckland. True that. And he says I'm driving. Yeah, as a city, just as a community, as a location, it's just a lot. I mean, look, different.
I'm not
folks,
bothered by that.
Skills.
Where do I not risk crashing into the sea as much?
Well, but you look at his next comment. Fuck flying to Wellington. I'm driving down.
Well, yeah. Well, if you can't, but if you for in Australia or something, it doesn't sound like maybe taking a ferry would be that great either. So, right.
Yeah.
Important travel information for anyone considering making the trip this summer.
Yes, yeah. Look, but I told you that I'm doing my skipper's course this winter, and I just hope that 19th of July will be a day off. So I will buy tickets, and anyway, might be able to resell them later on, but it will hopefully it's going to be myself and my family, so we'll all go and
That would
watch
be
the game.
fantastic to have that inside
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, no, and I will make a couple of videos and whatnot. See what I can see. Well, it's been a while since we streamed.
Hmm.
So now, few weeks had gone by. How do you feel about the whole promotion situation, and the first team in the English professional system to get
Yeah.
a three-peat, and like, did it sink in? Like, what do you feel now?
I think it has it has sunk in, but certainly as soon as the reality, the acknowledgement of it started the anxiety for next season. Because and in that we have the, at least for me, emotional roller coaster, especially as a new fan to football, but specifically Wrexham, of this parting of ways like last season with players that I have even more attachment to than last season, the uncertainty of who they're going to be replaced with. This obviously isn't over yet, the coming and going that will build the team for next season. And we know that there have been a number of stated challenges by lots of people on the logistics side, on the side of play, on the administrative side, for the club to keep up with this absolutely stratospheric ascent. So
Hmm.
I'm still happy for everyone. I think you put it really well with congratulating the fans, especially the veteran fans of the club, and of course the players, for how momentous an event it was, and how history making, and it'll never be repeated. Not just in our lifetimes, but probably ever. And so, I mean, I still I think it's so wondrous. It's still a bit ethereal and still feels a little bit like a dream when I really think about it. But from the acceptance standpoint of, obviously, they went to Vegas, these other things that help move me forward, my mental state forward, from not just being locked in that day of disbelief and the day after the day after.
Yeah.
It brings with it those realities of every day we're one day closer to next season. We have a very short period of time in which to build a plan, much less enact the plan, if we want to hit the ground running, day one. So I'm a little anxious. It's exciting, but again, I think the universally acknowledged obstacles that we face will be the thing that makes it analytically interesting or objectively interesting, but on the flip side, emotionally torturous for people who are invested and care about it, rather than
Yeah.
just a scientist watching, a glass dome over a bunch of sea monkeys.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, it's I'm very much on the same page with you. Um, the the disbelief, I guess, from my point of view, the disbelief is a bit. It comes from a different angle. It's like, I don't want to sound rude or abrupt. I don't really like, just like I said in the very beginning of this project that we're doing, is that I respectfully push aside the sentiment of old school historic following of the club, because you can't really, if you talk about football and the game and the style, the system, the development, you cannot incorporate and mix the emotion and the sentiment of fandom and historic um, frustrations or elations, because you need to choose what you're talking about. If you're talking about this side of football, it's one thing. And then if you're talking about pragmatic, purely game focused, action focused style approach, that is a completely different story. So you gotta kind of choose your battle, and that's why I'm kind of staying away from that emotional, fan side of things. For like for example, Chris right now, sorry, the Welsh one, he's saying that they got a plan. They got a plan, and they've been for the championship a month ago. Yeah, and they also would have a plan if we stay in League One. Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I mean. And from my point of view, I do have a plan on how I want our discussions, sort of our project to go, and I I think that right now, thinking about the championship, I changed my approach, or no, not changed completely, but I adjusted it a little bit because now I understand that we're in there. It's a fact.
Yep.
Parkinson is not going anywhere, so the
Yes.
overall overarching system is going to stay the way it is. So now, from my point of view, all I'm thinking about is that how we stay in, because the last thing you want to do in a championship is have a crisis mid-season in that new environment, because correcting, like historically, if you look at the teams, the higher up in the pyramid you are, the more problems you have trying to fix crisis along the way. So lower leagues will allow you to do that. Higher leagues, it's a lot harder. So usually the teams that struggle straight away, they stay struggling.
What
So
constitutes a
yeah.
crisis, Ivan? Like, because we tend to have a spate of injuries, for example, mid-season. Does that constitute, or are you talking about like administrative, financial? What would
No, I'm
constitute that?
I'm just talking about not getting the points, not
Okay.
getting yeah.
So being in a
Yeah.
relegation zone is its own crisis
Yes, being in
because
a
of the
relegation, and
consequences.
yeah, because I know that if the style that well, if the way that we play is not going to work out and is not going to bring decent enough result just to stay alive or go or do better, like if we do better, that's great, that's not a problem. However, it is a problem in its own merit. But if we're surviving, that is fine, and then we can fix it next season, kind of a thing, or start at least working in the interim on what's going to happen. But if it's a problem straight away, then it will be extremely hard to fix, not only because of the
There's no way to
coach.
catch your breath like if further in the season.
Yeah, so not only because of the coach, but only also because of the players he will select, and also because of the fact that the teams that we will have a good chance of taking points off, the amount of those teams will get a lot smaller. So you essentially only your pool of possible points becomes very limited. And on top of that, again, Welsh one asks very good question and adds the dimension to it. He is talking about me, maybe asking you, how would you think Americans will react if Wrexham is 18th next season, and we only win 15 games or so, because that will add another element to the equation. Would Americans lose interest, or is survival battle something that people will be excited about, because that will add another challenge to the entire process.
Yes, I mean, and again, my experience, it's tough to speak for, all Americans on really any given point right now. But I think there's a good chance that certainly those that are invested will continue to remain loyal to the team, because a lot of us have become, fans for life, supporters for life. I don't see it having a negative impact necessarily on any new fans that might come. From example, the season 4 has been released. I haven't watched it yet, so if anybody has seen it, no spoilers. I'm going to watch it tonight. But so
I
if there's
haven't either.
interest from going to Australia or from it having made the national news and stuff here, to have that challenge, to have them not, ascend again right into the premiere, I don't think that in general Americans as a market would have a problem with that or would be discouraged or leave. They wouldn't be happy. They want the players to succeed. They want them to perform their best and, show the world what heart and what makes Wrexham distinctive. But there has historically in the United States been the celebration of the underdog. Well, if you just keep bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, I mean, like, when does Wrexham stop being an underdog with our financial standing, with our access to things? So we started out with an underdog. We're going to be an underdog going into the championship, as any club being promoted from one division to another, right? You just came up. Everybody else has been there for a minute. But, Rocky, Rudy, do they all start with R? So many classic films or storytelling in American genre deal with adversity, as all stories should, the way they're structured. So I think it would resonate. And the messages of community, of supporting one another, would probably be hugely appealing to an American audience right now, to support one another through, disappointment, given the political environment that we're experiencing right now. So I don't know any American fans from online, mostly, for example, who have necessarily the same temperament that I find more common amongst Brits. Keeping in mind that for a lot of Americans, their experience with football or soccer here is a different structure, a different system than the EFL or what Brits, from the cradle have grown up with, and what the culture amongst the supporters and fans is. So no, I don't think that if they end up 18th, other than feeling sorry for them, nobody's going to walk away.
I think at this stage right now, if we had problems in League One, for example, then people would be more likely to turn away. But being in a championship now, I think, just because of the caliber of the competition, we will keep on attracting people. I guess a lot of people really, really want the promotion to the Premier League in the next few years. I don't. I honestly don't. I think that the infrastructure has to catch up first and foremost. We are already stretched. We are already well stretched, and I think that the underdog situation, we will stay the underdog for the foreseeable future, up until we are well solidify ourselves in the championship, and up until we have we have a infrastructure base. And I think that the fact that we are in a championship right now it's nothing but a miracle, because with all due respect, football, like the way we played from the National League up, like National League was a bit different just because we had such a bunch of superior players that it was very hard to mess it up, even though we almost did. But the League Two, League One, football like that, like the way we play in modern world, should not win. Like it goes against. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like a reverse psychology almost, and the fact that, like, that's what I mean when I said during my monologue, get this guy every single player he wants, because that's our only chance to do good enough in the championship, because we don't have anything else to rely on. And we'll see how it all goes, but I just really want the team to do well enough to stay up next year, and maybe start working towards the base, the foundation for the future.
What I find interesting is when you made those statements, you didn't say anywhere in there that Parky leaving was inherent in achieving those goals. Now, obviously, we will find out, to what extent, they're linked. But what you're saying isn't Parky dependent necessarily as a concept. These are the things, these are the tasks, the concerns that need to be addressed. And if Parky delivers, they can be achieved. He's not yet a documented hindrance to those things being possible. He has the opportunity to pursue those goals, and future isn't written yet. So there's an opportunity for him to achieve them. We're going to find out.
You know what? Interesting thing about that, since we talk about the coaching stuff, people are leaving now, right? So Fletch is gone, Howard is gone, Davis is gone. People who'd gone before, like previous leagues. If I'm not mistaken, just thinking about it right now, in their farewell statement, nobody had mentioned Parkinson by name.
Huh.
Not a single person. Not even, like, they all mentioned the culture, the players, the locker room. Not a single person mentions that. Is relatively weird. Like, from my knowledge, from my experience, when and like looking at just remember people like John Terry, people who left Mourinho, even I remember Peter Crouch. I remember there was a bunch more. Just like trying thinking about name. People usually mention, especially if they stay at the club for a certain amount of time, they do mention coaches, because if you have somebody to thank for your development, your mentoring, well, Welsh one is saying right now they thanked everybody but Parky. And it's not just one or two players. I don't remember the entire time of players. Like, I remember Aaron James, who pretty much left and didn't say anything, and he was really, really pissed off. And there were other players who were really pissed off. I don't remember players thanking Parky. It's because what happens is that he, like you saying, he's not a hindrance. He's not a hindrance, but he's not help either. From coaching and tactical standpoint, he lets them. Probably the most used phrase in that locker room is, "You guys know what to do. You guys know what you're doing. Go and play football." Like, that's probably the most used phrase in there. I'm simplifying everything and trying to make it really, really concise. But you know what I mean?
But I'm just thinking of being in those boots in the locker room with all the things that I have writing on my career or my family, and essentially having those words told to me. This is the plan. You know what the plan is. Do I know what to do? Jesus.
Yeah, go play. Essentially, it's all along the lines of, hey guys, I made sure you fit. I made sure you have your shirts on. I made sure that I do basic pep talk, and we work on certain skills. Just we work on sort of team cohesion and chemistry in the training sessions. And now go play well. If you're not playing well, hey, you got to play better. Okay. That's.
So, how much is standard? Is there a formula? Because you had mentioned before on an episode there was some statistic about. I think it was the 60-minute mark or whatever. At some point in a match is the one that is the most crucial or most interesting, or where statistically matches, win, lose, it was dynamic, whatever the reference was. So what I've just wondered from listening to you is there a formula for how much classroom time a training program has versus on the pitch time implementing the concepts from the classroom? And do we perhaps have an imbalance of that as an alternative or in conjunction with a vague message?
It depends on every coach is different like that. I know that some, and I myself, when I was coaching, I really like to have it around sort of 40 classroom, 60 practice, but I'm talking about full-time players, right? So it's a different environment. With what we got going on, I guess the main credit to Parky is that he did hire good people, like the people that we have good personalities, and obviously they are, that no dickhead rule is actually working. And what Welsh one is saying in the chat, with the approach like that, to create that a good locker room, you need to just step back, and you need to, as a coach, you
Okay.
need to step back. And if you trust your leaders, that's why he likes those experienced veteran players, is because once
Okay.
they are there, they will dictate the locker room. So as a coach, you don't really need to get involved in that dynamics. If you
Okay.
know that, if you know that nobody is showing red flags and nobody is being an asshole, everything should be okay. So you just leave them be, watch the dynamics on the outside, and everything is going to be fine. And that's one thing that he did well. But that's quite an, it's also quite an old school approach. When you're, you don't really interfere with that if everything goes well. The new school is a lot more like an academy, like a university almost. So you
Okay.
do have classroom sessions, you do have like your practice essentially you would run over to the side of the pitch, and they will have whiteboards, or you have a classroom session before the practice, and then you come out and start implementing it. So it's all about theory, practice, theory, practice, theory, practice. But that's if you have something sophisticated. That's if you
Ah,
have more than one. That's if you have more than one scheme to learn. That's if you have more than one system to learn. For example, today we're practicing this and that. We're practicing transitioning from 3-4-3 into 5-4-1, and this is what we're going to do here. Then but with the way Wrexham is playing, like it's quite straightforward, being quite intuitive, and it's something that a lot of the football players understand innately. When you defend, you become compact and you just slide, depending on where the ball is, and you making sure that you have your what's called pressure triangles going. So we don't have really anything else. There is nothing else to work on there.
yeah.
Hence,
You mentioned we don't
hence
have
the
that plan B.
we would whenever we our plan B is more of plan A. That's our plan B.
Like, what was it? What was the thing you said? It made me laugh so much. The do do stupid things faster with more energy.
Well,
With the
yeah, no,
coffee, the coffee.
yeah, yeah. So,
I'd never heard that before, and it still hits. It still slaps that like it did the first time.
and again, Chris put a good comment in there. When I was there, when Chris was there playing, despite training on the car park or school field, it was about 30% classroom, and the rest was drills on what we had learned. Yes, exactly. So, yeah, I said 40-60. He's saying 30-70. But the more professional you get, the higher the football team is, the more classroom, the more theory you usually receive. And again, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. The
Can I just bring back something real
Yeah,
quick to what you said
yeah.
earlier? Because as a non-footballer,
Hmm.
but someone who has played team sport, a lot of almost my entire childhood and into adulthood, when you were describing, the implementation and the inclusion of experienced players almost as like surrogates for Parky
Hmm.
in the locker room that he constructed for this culture and an ethos, what it really sounded like to me was almost a situation where they coach themselves, kind of. Now, that may not technically be accurate, but it seems like an environment, if we were to take away, other factors, where if you were wanting to cultivate future coaches or help cultivate leadership and have it foster within the locker room, that hands-off approach could be effective in achieving those goals. But as someone who, in a sport or I don't know, work, if there's ambiguity with something on the line, I would prefer clearer instruction directly from, the head honcho of what they want, and then we collaborate or whatever to get to it, than kind of nebulous. So there doesn't really have to be a necessarily argument or anything, but when you were describing that, the first thing I thought of was, it sounds like they're coaching themselves then. If this is what I want, this is what we want to achieve. Now make it happen.
So
Older guys
what
lead the younger
yeah,
guys.
yeah, what you're describing is when when the plan kind of never changes, and you know exactly what you're going to be doing,
Okay.
in
Fair.
when it's the same every time.
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
you Any practice in any sport, be it hockey, be it individual sports, boxing or wrestling or football, your most complex elements are simply a combination of basics done at expert level at a very high speed.
Okay.
Okay, so
And
um,
intermingled, switched up. So not necessarily linear.
yeah,
And
in different in different order. So essentially, every practice comes down to you go back to basics, but you practice them in a certain pattern.
Mhm.
So when your team already knows what's going to be happening, and it doesn't matter who we play, the thing is going to stay the
Right.
same with slight deviations. Practices usually consist of micro games, like, so they will take a situation, a certain part of the pitch, and they will keep practicing those. So be it a rondo, be it a combination of passes and runs. Effectively, when people say, we got to, he did really well in practice, or he practiced with intensity. All it is that the person practices at a level that is true to life. So, for example, when you receive a ball, you don't just receive a ball and then you pass it. You receive the ball, but before you do, you have your shoulder checks. You have a certain body position. You're in a good athletic stance. So you're mimicking, you replicating the real world situation. So you don't just nobody's going to let you just receive the ball in a real game. You need to be able to um, you need to be able to visualize. Okay, I'm going to have a defender on my back. I'm going to have two more here. I need to make sure that I know where my teammates are before I receive the ball. So all those things, they matter.
So it's not just the fundamental skill itself of receiving the ball. You're talking about an elevated level of awareness and the awareness to incorporate that as part of your practice, or your
Yes.
training, that you will have been introduced to that mindset and ethos to incorporate into your training, rather than, okay, I've developed my touch better. This is great. Okay, well, how does that touch serve you if you have someone on your back?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And sorry, just give me 1 second, please.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. I wonder what Ivan's doing. Wow, that was very quick.
Sorry.
No, you're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Rocky wanted to get in. You,
Aw.
my dog. Yeah. So yes. Can you just say your last sentence again so I can get back into?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I was just, it was occurring to me that when you were describing the mindset of a true match environment versus a training environment, to me, that conveys a player that's been exposed either to that level of competition to take it into consideration, or has been trained by someone to think of those things, because that in and of itself isn't just going to happen unless you have, in most cases,
Yeah.
I think you have to be taught to think to do that.
Yes, well, that's what footballers refers to, and when coaches say, intensity. I don't like. That's why I don't like those. I don't like those buzzwords when people just throw them, because we have to agree on terms. If to establish good understanding and good communication, you have to agree on terms. So when people say intensity, it can mean a lot of things, but most of the time, what it means is that it's an incorporation of a multitude of factors that goes into every single moment of the pitch, on the pitch,
Okay.
whether you're training or you playing. For example, if you executing basics, and you are learning a certain pattern or a system. Now you're not only receiving the ball, you're not only maintaining your tactical position on the pitch, you not only are aware of where everybody is on the pitch all the time, but you're also thinking about 2 steps ahead. What's next? Where do I, before I receive the ball, I need to know what the plan is, where the ball is going to go. So what's next? What's after? And That's what Wrexham has been lacking through these years. Is that the only thing that happens is that, for example, remember how I was talking about Max Kluivert, even though he's
Mhm.
developing and growing and getting better, his creative side, his first pass is not um, is not developed yet, because all he does, and it goes to pretty much every defender that we have, but it's not their fault necessarily. It's because all they ask to do is to hoof the ball forward quite often, most of the time, 90% of the time. So they don't really think about a more complex structure like, okay, I need to look at the triggers, I need to look at the situation around me, and I know that if this guy is there, if that guy is over there, if I'm over here, this triggers plan A. If this guy is not here but there, this triggers plan B, and all that, like, you computing that as you go. So your basics, all they become automatic, obviously, but the next steps, they are conditional.
Mhm.
But in our case, the next step is always the same.
Mhm.
So you know
And
what I
even
mean. And
if you've had these ideas introduced to you, so we're going to say that, as you've mentioned, our former, our ex-premier players, ex-championship players will have been likely familiar with this style of play, these kinds of options, decisions at faster speed, more ways to approach things, right? Because they've done it. Not only they learn it, but they have the reps. They've done it. If we have, let's say, Max, and he even has had the concepts introduced to him, he simply doesn't have the reps to be able to, one, maybe implement them, on the fly in a single moment of opportunity that might happen in the season or in a match, but also then perhaps the confidence to seize that moment, even if he did recognize it, because he doesn't have the reps to know what his body's going to do, to know what to expect from it. It's one thing to be academically informed about something and have an idea of how it works. Like, I might know how to put a car engine together, but should I really be building it for a school bus that's going to haul kids? Like, it's not the same as having that physical experience, the muscle memory even connected to the brain.
yes, yeah, well, and that's what that's why I'm saying that, that kind of football um, should not be winning. It's mainly because, and a lot of people, I guess, argue like, oh, well, we win and that's all that matters, it brings the results. Like, yes, it does, but a direct sort of that direct style of play with heavy reliance on long ball transitions and kick and chase style, including wingbacks, it works in lower leagues because you do have a higher caliber players, but then it becomes very much outdated when you are playing against the fluid possession based teams that will challenge your decision making a lot more than the lower leagues. Do you know what I mean? So, and then when you get to championship level, which is a very good level, one of the best leagues in the world, uh, you will be challenged, you will be asked questions every time, and if you carry on showing the same um, decision making patterns, uh, the opposition will be able to shut you down. Maybe not straight away, but in a very short amount of time. And then you really need to have a real plan B and plan C and so on and so forth. And I
I
wonder if
have an
that's going to happen.
anecdote for
Yeah.
you because a lot of what you're saying is translating to me. As I said, I've played team sport. I have a memory of, I must have been in middle school for this one. So when I was playing softball in a summer league, it was fast pitch girls softball. And there was a game where I pitched a shutout. So that wouldn't have really meant a whole lot to me, but it just so happened to be a game where my dad attended. And he said to me, "Remember this day. This
Mhm.
doesn't happen often." Now, there were a lot of different things. Like, we were the worst team in the league, hands down, for a lot of reasons. I once was a catcher for one inning that lasted an hour and a half. And by the time I got back to the dugout, my shins were raw and bleeding from all the gravel inside. But this is a different match, different year, different match, same team.
Yeah.
So what happened was the way my dad explained it after the fact, was every single pitch I threw in this fast pitch softball would have been considered a slow pitch.
Right.
And so all of these girls were expecting it to come in at the standard rate. And I wasn't doing it on purpose. It's just how it was happening over and over and over again. And the game was short and it was done and we won. And there it was. Had we played again, as we did with more gifted pitchers, I was needed elsewhere since we didn't have anybody that could catch in the outfield. So there too, we were a really bad team. But when we had a more traditional fast pitch, someone on the mound or someone who was tall, on first base, the factors that led to people being in their positions, it really illustrates to me some of the concepts that you're showing of, it wasn't expected. It worked that one time. We won that game. I have the unique claim of having pitched a shutout game all by myself. But if we had played them again and they had practiced, because I'd not pitched before with any regularity, and their coach knew I was coming, he would have trained in practice his team. All right, we know that she's going to throw slow. So we're going to work on, choking up. We're going to work on whatever the case may be. So when you extend the Ruby Slippers shutout match or game into a season of Wrexham, and people have been waiting for us. I mean, I know the championship sides have had plenty to do last season on their own, right? But for a season, there's been discussion of us getting up there. We are no better liked now for having achieved the back-to-back-to-back than we did last season. So with far more capable, deeper pockets, more tech to prepare for our rather predictable style, is part of why I know I'm concerned and I know that you are. But that's just a different way for me to process what you're saying of, even I've done some cool shit, but I wasn't doing it against major league players or even the farm teams.
That's very good. It's a very good comparison, and that's why that links well to the point that the amount of new players that are going to be coming in and the level of the new players will have to be substantially better. And we see all these people who are leaving the club right now, and there is a lot more to come. So obviously they just got rid of those who could just leave and the contract is up. Next step is going to be sending everybody else on loan. So it's the starting 11 will be drastically different. Wayne, good morning to you too. Thank you very much for joining us. And I will just show this comment by the Welsh one, because that relates quite well to what you said and what was I was saying before. So all players at the only difference between a Prem player and a National League player is consistency. Yes, so they all have a certain amount of football knowledge and the football IQ. They all been trained to a certain level, but the key here is to be consistent in displaying those skills and performing those tasks under pressure, and at the same time, with this, what needs to happen is that if you are just like you're saying, if you're throwing a slow pitch all the time, you need to be able to change it on the fly. So and that's what I meant before. It's like it's all trigger based. So the higher up you go, the higher the level becomes. The more tools you need to have on your belt, and the faster you need to be able to switch and then incorporate it into the teamwork. So do your teammates understand what you're doing? Are you playing as a part of is your play a part of a system? Is your play a part of a setup, or are you just improvising? And that's what I was talking about during my last monologue, is that the last couple of games, it was a bit more unpredictable from our side because the game appeared more fluid at the same time, but you could tell that was not necessarily well, it was not planned. It was not a planned tactical shift. It was people trying really, really hard and kicking into the overdrive, trying to find a new ways of getting the job done, essentially. So yeah, I mean that's it's a very good analogy.
And I think that part of it reemphasizes what you've said before about it's not an illegitimate approach. The
Mm.
disruption play approach can be very effective in, leagues where folks are really used to a more polished or, technical form of play. You've been clear about that. So back to the softball of, so yeah, every once in a while, if my coach wanted to shake things up against a different team, pull me and put me on the mound, and they're not ready for it when they haven't prepared as kind of an accent, as something to switch things up, but not as if the team were reliant upon me. If I were like the Paul Mullen of
Mhm.
slow pitches in fast pitch softball, then that doesn't work for a season. We're not getting promoted. We're fighting off relegation at best. So I think it's really helped me, as we've gone on the season through the different episodes, to get even more understanding about the complexity of your message, being that, hey, just because it's not a style that you particularly like or necessarily agree with as what you would prefer to see as a spectator or to maybe implement if you were the coach, it has merit, it has its place, but we need something else. It can't be the only meal that we serve.
Yeah, look, and that's exactly why, a lot of the times when people ask me, it's like, so if you're looking for sexy football, you need to be looking elsewhere. You're watching the wrong team and whatnot, wrong competition, and I completely disagree with that. Mainly because the what I want is variety. What I want is something that we can build on, and I really hope that this time around the approach will evolve, that the concept will evolve, and will have more than one trick to our pony. Let's put it this way. And for that, obviously, just like I said, the transfer window is going to be crucial, and it looks like we're not going to have any problems with funding. So it's just about the finding those players who come in, and they are the players need to be at the level where they can dictate the game themselves. So that's why it's so hard to find the players that we need. So we can't just go and get a good player as such. We need somebody who can be essentially their own coach. Let's put it this way.
Autonomous.
Yeah, yeah, very much so, and that will be the main source of evolution and improvement. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge.
It sounds to me a bit, again, newbie, outsider, that finding a player, especially if they're not a super experienced one, and we do like to collect, you know, players that are approaching their retirement years as
Hmm.
players, that to find someone with the confidence to be autonomous, at least in practice, because, well, I guess maybe Parky could tell him, you know what to do, you make the decision, which sounds a lot like passing the buck the way I'm putting it. But when we have an autonomous player who can do those kinds of things, the level of confidence that would have to accompany that level of decision making in their own skill set, in their own judgment, makes me think it would start to slide a little bit closer to, people who might be seen as dickheads or who might be less patient with folks who don't possess the same level of skill, in the locker room. So if that's the kind of player that we're looking for, if we're looking for one that's not a dickhead, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know about the higher levels of football to begin with, but my understanding is like the prima donna aspect increases as you go up the leagues into these super famous teams. So will it be tougher for us to find someone to fit that formula? Because just to me, it sounds like we wouldn't have that big of a pool of people that would fit the culture and deliver that kind of skill or pitch personality?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will get harder inevitably as you go as you increase the level of difficulty and the level of competition. It does get harder, but the main thing is that that's the main difference between lower leagues and championship for example, and the top of the championship and the Premier League is that your club becomes less approachable, less community based. It loses that openness to the fans and to the people of the town, because you do get those inevitably dickheads and prima donnas eventually, and then you don't have the players walking through the car park to get to the building. They shut themselves away from the crowds, and that's the thing that we don't want to lose. Is that the beauty of this club right now? Um, is that everything is quite open and it's very approachable, and it's very community based still. So that's why I don't want to even get to the Premier League, to be honest, because
One of the things that
it will.
I am worried about too. And then when I had thought of it, so you kind of just put it that way, the new players that we would get in, unless it were some, stroke of luck or chance that it was someone that had either had a great experience playing with Parky in the past, or had at some point maybe in their younger career played at Wrexham, what reason would they have to have that connection, that sentimentality towards the club that we have benefited from, people wanting to be a part of this story and this journey and whatnot. But we also had a lot of homegrown folks, or folks who came back, like Ben Foster, who'd been there before and knew what the club was about during harder times or things like, or previous heydays. So what reason would a person doing a job, sure, they don't want to be a jerk about it, but they're there to do a job, they're getting paid for it, what reason do they have to expose more of their private life or their personal time or to the entitlement of fans that they've not built a relationship with? Maybe they would over time, but I could see how, not even from these people who might be confident and capable new players actually being assholes, but perhaps being perceived as such, just because confidence can often be seen as arrogance from people. I mean, it can be a very fine line and lead to friction. So I'm not excited about going to the Premier, but hey, maybe after the championship I will. But
To be honest, I don't think it's going to be our immediate worry about going to the
Woo!
Premier League. Honestly,
one
I
less
think
worry. Yes.
Yeah, I think we just need to focus on doing well enough in the championship. And Wayne, that was not my alarm; that was Ruby's. But yeah, I know
Yes,
that
that was
sounds
my
true.
apologies.
Yeah,
My apologies.
no. He's just saying he's got the same tone. Look, and on that, what you're saying is that I'm not excited about seeing a huge turnover and seeing a lot of people go, which will, again, it will be a complete necessity because knowing what we're going to do next season and the way we're going to play, we're going to need a far better players just to survive. But if we played under another system, under another approach, under another philosophy, then you could actually maintain your squad largely and develop them and set them up for a new challenge successfully, because those people, when it comes to skill and fitness, they will be on par. The differences between a lower league player and a high league player is usually up here. Their education, their tactical and strategical preparation. So, for example, even looking at the older players like Stephen Fletcher, who is now gone, I can tell you that under a different system, under a different approach, under a different coach, he could play in championship just as easy, because he was one of our best players, if not the best player still. And if you were to use him, and if you were to tactically develop or have few different systems going on, he could still be playing and he could still be doing a lot of good things. But we knowing the approach of Parkinson and the way we're going to be playing, he's not going to work. He's not going to work.
Super sub, but you could also think of him as the pinch hitter, like tactical, and like insertion of brilliance in identified moments that could tip the scales. But again, we're us.
But you need to have more than one trick.
True,
in
you
your
need
bag.
to have more than one.
Yeah, and then at the same time, what you will find is that quite often when you get promoted and you go to the league above, a lot of the players who were sitting on the bench mainly last year, or being
Hmm.
your sort of hinge players, they all of a sudden do better in the higher league. But it's all up to the development. It's all up to, again, tactical and strategic approach to what kind of game you're going to be playing. Because
Hmm.
sometimes as a player, you just don't have a good season, but it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
mean that you're a write off. So yeah, it is quite common for players to do that. Um,
Can I
it's
ask
but
you
it
a
yeah it
future question?
yeah. The
Oh
what?
no, go
Sorry?
ahead. Let me finish your thought. Finish your thought.
No, I'm done.
So when we're talking about, the departure of some of these players, which given the speed, I'm going to put a lot of it on the speed at which we've ascended, right? Our
Hmm.
squad could not keep up with its skill set from the National League up to the championship, and the amount of time that we had was completely unrealistic. That's not the club we were when we started,
Hmm.
in National League. So let's say we stay in the championship for it like indefinitely.
Hmm.
Championship, League One, whatever, for however many years it takes. Given your
Hmm.
experience, do you have an idea with this influx of funds, especially if we stay in the championship, with the infrastructure being invested in, like the academy, training pitches, things like that? Do you think, one, that it'll happen? Sure, okay, great. But how long do you think it would be before we can start cultivating homegrown Wrexham players again through our own academy that are able to stay on board? Are we talking 5 years, 10 years? How long does it take for, I mean, I know that maybe Parky's leadership has a lot to do with that, because when you've talked about systems, and the style of a club or what it's known for, that affects an academy. But what would you say in our case might be when we can have our Jordan Davies, when we can have you know, our guys not have to leave because they're good enough?
That Look, we might already have some of those players, but they need to be developed and they need to be trusted and they need to be worked on. The That's why I was
By
saying
someone
maybe the
that's
good.
going to expand those skill sets, not with the
Yeah,
approach that
that's.
okay.
Remember how I said a couple of episodes ago that it would be nice to maybe get an assistant to Parkinson with a bit of a modern approach so they can start actually developing those players. But the infrastructure is lacking. It's lacking hugely, and that's why we even stretched for infrastructure for the championship yet a lot. For the Premier League, so it would be nice to catch up on the infrastructure, and it will take a little bit of time. It's not like America where you can do everything just within 1 year and everything is done. There, the bureaucracy is a lot heavier and it takes a lot longer. And yeah, I think it's not too long before we can start producing our own, next generation talents. But it all starts from the top. It all starts from the head of coaching essentially, and then the main team, they just need to be able to give those young players a chance. But when you give those young players a chance, there should be again a system or a number of different systems that can safeguard them, because you let a player go and um, try their skills out and try their hand at playing higher level. You need to make sure that you have a system in place that will help them. It will not just put pressure on them, but it will also support them. So, and we know from the way we're playing that Parkinson loves to play his players into the ground. So we will the starting 11, we get a lot of injuries. The same players play over and over again. There is no rotation. So we know that for young players, playing under Parkinson is objectively not the best environment to be, just because not going to they're not going to get the best out of their time with the club. And well, I brought Wayne's comment on the screen.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right about no dickhead policy, and giving the example of Melbourne Storm. The I mentioned it a few minutes ago that one of the things that Parker did really well is creating the culture of the locker room through hiring the right personalities, and that is a very crucial part that needs to stay. He doesn't have too many strong sides to his style technically and strategically, but this is one of his good sides. And if we manage to just keep a locker room full of good people, and we do well enough in the championship to stay alive, then no mid-season crisis, no nothing. Then I just hope, my hope is that we'll slowly transition into the new way of doing
Well,
things
yeah, I guess
later
if
on.
we had the stability first, because it sounds like we need some sort of stability in order to cultivate the plan B. I mean, we don't really have the luxury of that. It has to be implemented simultaneously given our position, right? If it's going to happen. But having stability, financially, infrastructure, admin, all those other things could only help quicken the implementation of new style of play or expansion and things like that. If you have confidence that you've got a solid foundation to then go off and, build more or expand or diversify. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I'd be happy watching Wrexham. Yeah, I've realized
I
that this is me just saying it in the championship forever and having,
mhm.
access, having the personalities, having the stories, having the struggles, the causes that these people bring with them. It's not just about, illness that we learn about, mental health, we learn about autism, but like Elliot Lee, the number on his jersey for, his former teammate.
Yeah,
We, as an American fan, and I think I can speak in a generalization about this as an American fan for others, the story behind it, and not just storytelling like it's fiction, the background, the struggles that these folks have gone through. For me, it's very
hmm
much like the Olympics. I didn't know about the Latvian men's beach volleyball team in 2008, but they were seeded number 24 and they kicked the shit out of the number one seeded US team, who I didn't like their personalities that summer very much anyway. And when they weren't going to go further, they were still seeded 24th. They probably got bumped out in the next round. But when that guy hit the sand, that Latvian ripped his shirt off and screamed when they won. Or Togo. I didn't know that guy went to France most of the time without his family to have the training facilities for kayaking or whitewater rafting or whatever it was. Like the stories of
yeah.
struggle and overcoming, or the challenges that make them relatable to people today who aren't even trying to be footballers when they grow up. It's just so relatable. And especially when things turn out well, a lot of us find it inspiring and healing to see good
That
things happen to good people.
that's the beauty of sports, because sports is effectively it's a miniature, but a very vivid and concentrated miniature of life,
Yes,
and it's a huge catalyst, and everything we see through
merit
the
based,
eyes.
but still luck, like uncontrollable factors. You can work
Exactly,
hard, do
exactly.
hard, be a good person, and bad shit can still happen, or the
Yeah,
inverse. I hadn't
yeah.
thought of it that way. Huh.
With Wayne's comment, I agree partially with you, Wayne, on this one. We did develop Max, but he still has. Well, I spoke about it a bit before. He's a destroyer. We developed him physically. We developed him for the job that he needs to do in the lower leagues, playing hoofball. He still lacks a lot of the creative skills, the first pass. And you're absolutely right. I was talking about the young players coming in before. They need to play against better to get better. Perfect. Absolutely right. But with Max, I don't think he developed properly. He's developed very one-sided. He's a showstopper when it comes to creative part of the game, when you need to provide a nice little pass from a defense to start an intricate attack or something that can be developed into multitude of avenues on the pitch. He doesn't have that because his entire job through his years in the main team was to hoof the ball forward. But he does show promise every now and then of those little through balls higher up the pitch, and he obviously scores the goal. So he has that an understanding of where to be and when to be. But unfortunately, we did not develop him further. He could be turned into a next Maldini, in not only with his defensive skills but his vision. But for that, he needs to be asked to do more. So if you know what I mean. But yes, you're absolutely right. For what it is, for what he is, for where he was, yes, he was the only one who was developed fully. With limitations, but it will be interesting to see how he does in the new league.
Well, Ivan, we are over an hour now. Do you have some other points that you would like to get to and emphasize before we go to Everything is Football? Or do you have some more comments we need to read?
I just wanted to show this comment too, because that
Sure.
kind of echoes what we were talking about before, is that when you go higher and you need to bring high caliber players, and you were saying that essentially you're gonna start having assholes inevitably. And Wayne describes it from a different angle, but pretty much
Okay.
on par with that. Yeah, I think it's very fair. I just wanted, before we go to everything is football, player of the season, Ollie Rathbone. Yeah, great. Working horse, absolute machine. The young player, I think, was it Brunt? Brunt or Max? Who was the young player?
I
Sorry,
don't
for some
remember.
reason. Yeah,
I
but
assumed
anyway,
it to be Max because I thought everyone was going to vote for Max. I can't even remember, which is not, and my apologies, a disservice to the players, but there were so many worthy candidates that were being discussed leading up to that.
on that point, that's exactly what I want to talk about. All the MVPs that were selected were outfield players. That kind of does my head a little bit. We lacked possession throughout the entire season. We were put under pressure throughout the entire season. The player of the season should be Arthur Okonkwo, and the entire goalkeeper
Oh, fair.
department should be mentioned. Like, what's going on? Why they are the ones, like the amount of clean sheets. We were getting battered every game almost, and the goalkeeper is not mentioned in any awards. Like, it's just, unless I missed something, but that just, I don't understand. We
I have a
literally relied.
cultural question for you then, Ivan, because
Mhm.
I thought, did Arthur get young player of the season last season?
I'm not sure, but Wayne is just saying that Max was young player and the player's player.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. I remember the player's player because I saw that video. But so let's just say, regardless of whether or not I'm correct, let's say Arthur had gotten young player of the season last season. Is there a bit of cultural etiquette within, football, within a given club, of you don't give it to the same guy 2 years in a row when you have, you want to encourage other young players? Not that Max or whoever else wouldn't be deserving, but I mean, what if your number one is always the number one? What does that do to the psychology of the rest of the side if Arthur's always going to get it, or something like that? How do you handle that? Could that be a factor? I guess.
Again, depends on the culture of each club and the team, but it's all performance based. So obviously, if person
Right.
deserves it, doesn't matter if he gets it 3-4 times in a row. If that's the guy, that's the guy. But yeah.
Okay.
But obviously, in this case, they looks like they're trying to share the love a little bit. But I was very surprised that the goalkeepers were not really praised as much as they should have. Because
Okay.
yeah, our defense was far from perfect. Far from perfect. It wasn't bad, but they Arthur and other goalkeepers as well. They literally made the season.
No, I think that's a completely fair point. There were, for a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different, and that's, I think what makes it tough for me is when you have folks with such very different jobs on the pitch. Comparing them like for like is one thing, but comparing completely different roles as who ultimately, is most worthy or most deserving, just really, I can't conceive of it being fully impartial, because you're having to interpret the value of their role, like of their position in football, and then performance or what they were. So I am so glad I am not in charge of that. I once was a judge in a salsa contest, the kind you eat, not the dancing kind. And I didn't realize, and I said,
It's
yes, I
pressure.
didn't realize how cutthroat this would be. I had these ladies, and it was multi-tiered. So these little auxiliary clubs from all over the country. Here's Georgia peach salsa, and it was amazing. And here's New Mexico, which was a very green, and it had a blowtorch that went off, and they were fabulous. But you had to pick. I mean, like, they weren't even comparable. You use them And then the stress of it, don't you like it? Love it. I mean, like their faces up in your
Yeah,
face.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then the
Yeah.
next thing, the next night, and the next night. And I'm like, I can never do this shit again. Like they're all fabulous. I could do food reviews on all of these. I love them all. But you have to pick. And I hated it. I hated it. So I'm really glad that I'm not responsible for having to decide this shit. Because there's a lot of talent. There are a lot of great moments. I mean, people talk about goal of the season. I mean, it'd be tough on the women's side because there were some great worldies and stuff over there. But the one that stood
Yeah.
out for me most, fucking
Yeah.
Elliot Lee's corner. Like
Yeah,
Elliot
yeah,
Lee with the wind assist or vice versa, however you want to put it in
yeah,
the book.
yeah,
He assisted the
yeah.
wind. Like that one stood out for me because of what was it at the time? The statistics it's either a 1 in 100 chance or 1 in 1,000. You know, given that it's Lee, but so like, you know, it really.
Dry leaf is always special. That's, everybody will always remember a dry leaf. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Look,
anyways, all right.
well, what Wayne had said is actually really good. I didn't even think about that. Like the NHL system, for example. If you're a
Okay,
rookie,
yeah.
you're only a rookie one. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes,
Good point.
that would be a lot easier. Yeah, here's your debut year, and or your class into it. Yeah, I like at least there's a restriction then. There's some sort of delineation other than age, since you can play at different levels and be promoted up with your age. I like that idea too.
Yeah, that's a comment with regards to your salsa contest.
Oh no! Oh my god! I was so terrified. For like, they probably weren't going to like shoot me in the alley or something behind, but like the disappointment, like the dejection, like you had
Yeah.
rejected their grandmother or something, like
Yep.
their dead grandma, like
Family recipe dishonored.
oh my god, oh like
Yeah.
their whole state, just and I mean, no, yeah, never again, never again. Okay, so are we ready for Everything is Football?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, folks. In case there's someone here who is new and hasn't listened to previous episodes, we have a game we like to call Everything is Football, based on my confidence in Ivan's ability to observe any random object and find a way to turn it into a teaching tool, or at least connect it to football in some way. There are no restrictions on how he does this. We've had some fantastic and unexpected answers so far. I have not been disappointed yet. I have not stumped him yet. He has at times paused, mostly out of consideration for how he's going to phrase his answer, which we would like to applaud when he's doing it for sensitivity and attempting to be polite. So, item number 1 for Everything is Football today. We'll do 3 items that he hasn't seen these items before, doesn't know what to expect, and we'll see how it goes. Item number 1 today is a tape measure. So I'm holding up a blue standard tape measure that goes in and out for, I don't know if this one's 6 feet, 12 feet, 12 feet. Ivan, how is a tape measure football?
You know what? The first, how we're talking about when you're, when you're winning, but you're winning wrong, and there is an end to that story, and you really need to stop sort of stretching yourself. That is a very good analogy. The more you pull that tape out, the faster and the stronger the whiplash back is going to be.
Oh, okay.
So that's it. I'm thinking. Yeah. So the more you stretch it, if you need to keep on extending that and put pressure on that spring, when it goes and when it lets go, you're gonna know it. It's gonna snap your fingers off.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That was an excellent answer. I was expecting something more about, I don't know, distance on the pitch. You're never going to know, folks. I'm telling you, whatever you think the answer is going to be is not going to be it. All right, Ivan. Item number 2 in Everything is Football is a canister of curry powder. How is curry powder football, Ivan? Oh, I've been waiting on this one for a while. Choose your words carefully.
Yeah. Again, I'm just gonna share sort of the first thought that come
Sure.
into my head. I'm not being racist. I'm not being,
Okay, that's a terrible way to start.
no isms there. But people of Indian background are not really famous for being good footballers. They're good at cricket. That's the stereotypical view.
I had never thought about
But
that.
but well, curry to me, it's Indian straight away, right? So
Sure, sure.
I played with an Indian guy who absolutely destroyed my stereotypical view of an Indian person and a football player. He was you know how Indians quite often they're quite slim, they're quite lanky, they're quite skinny, but that guy, he was quite small, he was quite skinny, but the strength, determination, and the speed on that guy was so amazing. We called him Flying Indian, and and he was, for some reason that reminded me of, like, he was a revelation, like the guy. And Harp, if you're listening to this, yeah, I got huge respect for you and still remember you and the goals you scored and your extremely hard work. So that kind of proved me and my stereotypes wrong, and opened me up to a new dimension uh, of the Indian sport and Indian people who play football.
Well, and sometimes, depending on where you live, you don't necessarily have access to a really diverse population. You and I have both had a lot of privilege, to have had travel, and in our lives get to meet folks and go to different places, but not everyone does. And having a positive contact like that, for a lot of folks, I remember my mother speaking about it. The first time that they really had cultural exchanges were when they joined the military. They were lumped in with a bunch of different folks from different backgrounds and would be deployed or assigned to different areas of the country or the world. And for some of them, it would be their first exposure to, especially back then, before globalization, before the internet, before all the things we enjoy today, their first introduction into new food, culture, etiquette, things like that. I actually picked it because for me, it was confusing for a while because I knew that curry, obviously in the UK, having history with India and the British Empire, but to hear takeout, to hear basically a to-go meal called curry, I spent years as a young person thinking it was always actual curry. My dad used to cook yellow curry, at least quite a bit when I was younger. And so I just assumed everybody was eating curry all the time, and they didn't do pizza and they didn't do McDonald's. They did because, man, those Brits were just eating curry every damn day. So for me, it stood out as a, to-go terminology, or a takeout terminology, or takeaway, I guess is what they also say
Yeah,
now. Okay.
yeah, no. Well, let's say hi to Scott.
Oh,
Hopefully
hi,
you'll
Scott.
watch the replay. Yeah, we're at the tail end of the show, but yeah, good to have you here.
Okay, so we're on item number 3 of Everything is Football. And
Okay.
in homage to the last Ivanologue, I have brought
Uh-huh.
sunglasses. So, Ivan, I'm glad that your Miami Vice audition went so
Yeah,
well in your
yeah.
previous episode. But that is part of why I have now also sunglasses, which are, for those who can't see, pink heart-shaped sunglasses. So, Ivan, how are sunglasses football?
Well, if we're just talking about sunglasses, not necessarily pink and
Oh, yeah.
heart,
Don't have to worry
but
about the colors.
the only thing that I can connect football to sunglasses is Edgar Davids.
Who the
He
hell is that? Is this a
he
famous
was
person?
he is a famous player who played with his sunglasses on through the 90s and early 2000s.
I've wondered
He was
about that because as a softball player, especially when it's sunny and they're just not used to that in Wales, and half the pitch in shade and half in light, I'm like, man, but as a spectator, my eyes are screaming for some sort of lenses. And, back from when I was in the outfield or things like that. Or I guess goalies used to wear caps. Mark Griffiths has mentioned that a few times.
Yes.
on
Yeah.
commentating for games to, I guess, keep sun out of their eyes. And I saw one women's match where the keeper finally put on a hat at least once or twice. So this
Yeah.
guy, like, were they sporty? You know, like who was that?
So
Jamal.
actually, originally he wore like Oakley sort of like water drop style, so very slick
Okay.
sunglasses. But then it got to the point when I think he had some kind of eye condition as well.
Ah,
But what happened later is that he was prohibited from wearing shaded sunglasses, so he wore just the frame, no glass, not even like a clear glass. It became his signature. So he would always play with sunglasses with shades on. But even if they had no glasses, Google him. He was an amazing player. And
I
actually,
remember when I was, gosh, I must have been out of high school,
yes.
because I remember the development of the colored contacts, not the ones to make your eyes look like they're a different color and cool, but the sports ones, because they had a yellow contact lens that athletes could use, and the shade would depend on what sport and how the ball or whatever might, appear for you, instead of wearing, let's say, prescription sunglasses or something like my horrendous eyesight at that time would have incorporated, but just straight like doing his, oh, who was that guy? Drew Carey, like doing the Drew Carey thing of
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
wearing the frames but no glasses. That's unexpected.
Well, there you go. And here's a fun fact from Scott that Edgar played against Wrexham when he was player manager at Barnet,
No kidding.
and
Wow.
and he had glaucoma. That's right. He had glaucoma.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. Like, well, I've learned only in recent years that I guess Bono from
You too.
U2 has an eye condition. I just always thought, well, he's a rock star. You can wear whatever eyewear you freaking want. And that he'd had some sort of condition, his at least adult life, that needed some tinting and filtering for his comfort and health. So, all right, folks. Well, that was Everything is Football. Thank you so much, Ivan. That was very enlightening. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
no, always exciting. I really love that section.
Me too. Me too. And hopefully, everybody else does. If nothing else, well, I look forward to the next time, the next challenge. There will probably never be a day when you can't come up with something. But that certainly was the origin story of the segment. I knew
Absolutely.
you would too, but just I love you not knowing and having to do it on the fly. Like, I just love challenging you that way.
Yeah, you could just smell my brain cells burning because they're quite early in the morning, and I'm like, okay, let's think
No,
about that.
you've always got it, man. But again, the absolute like child like glee with which I have a running list of options. And then this morning before coming on, I went, okay, which ones have I done? Shit, I've done so many. Did I just think I did this one? Okay, let's go with these because I'm sure I haven't done these.
And Wayne, yeah, good. Bosnich, I'm talking about caps on goalkeepers. That's right. He wore caps sometimes. Well, to be honest, it all started like from 19th, 20th century, and the goalkeepers used to wear those. Like they were not really like caps; they were like those flat cap-looking hats, the old school ones.
Oh, like the
And
Peaky Blinder hats?
yes, yeah, that was the original headgear of the goalkeeper in football long time ago, and that's what Lev Yashin, he used to wear that. He was the USSR goalkeeper. He's one of the best goalkeepers of all times. He's in the Hall of Fame. So, and his famous picture of him wearing that style cap.
Wow. Huh. Well, I knew that the ones in the segment of Welcome to Wrexham where Elliot Lee and his dad are talking about their family history of football. And
Mhm.
I think one was in a frame. And I think this was the first time I'd seen one that had that little short brim, and it looked like a little schoolboy, of a different century's hat, and quite charming. Totally impractical, certainly nowadays. So great that they're ceremonial and whatnot. And of course, following Six Nations rugby, there's a lot more of actually seeing them on heads versus them just being related to as a statistic in football. But yeah, okay. Well, I think we've pretty much covered it for today. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel like we have spoken about a lot and we had some good conversations. And thank you very much, all the people in the chat. Thank you
Yes,
for
thank
your
you.
contribution. Please, if you're going to watch this again, leave us some comments, some questions. That would be great. And yeah, so the next time we go in, because as you can see, the entire show is based on just conversations. And give us some more topics and let's
Yes, we
get
didn't
involved
do
and talk more.
a viewer question on this episode, but certainly at any time, folks can submit either here on YouTube in the comments section or on the Instagram page, and then that gets forwarded to you for you to include in an upcoming episode. So please feel free to do that, folks. It doesn't just have to be a football question if you have one that's more in general. But I think with all the developments, transfer window, again, we've got the women playing in Hong Kong, the men coming, to the Southern Hemisphere. We've got TST. I think that's in June. Friendlies, the season of the documentary dropping. There's a lot of things that you might find have a topic that prompts you with a question of, I wonder what Ivan would say about that. So feel free to drop those on Insta or here, and he can get around to answering them on future episode.
The look at the comment from Wayne. My old sister-in-law was in Pushkas, the Hungarian's niece. Wasn't is Pushkas the Hungarian's niece. So Puskas, he's again one of the Hall of Fame famous footballer from Hungary. An amazing player. He has awards named after him.
Oh, wow.
Pushkas Awards, and so that's mind blowing. So that guy, it's like being related to Ronaldo or Messi, to put it in today's terms.
Wow. So
So that's on the
as good as
same.
being related to Stephen Fletcher, huh?
Yeah, not quite, but yeah. But
No,
funny
that
story
brings
about
up
Puskas.
when you
Puskas,
said
yeah.
something in your previous episode about my contact in the championship, my championship player contact. That was news to me, folks. For anybody who listened to that episode, I was not aware of said contact, which is fine. I'm not asking you to disclose. God knows, I think journalists deserve to be able to preserve their integrity and their sources and things like that in my country, much less elsewhere. But wow, good on you. I just didn't know that we had.
I'm very football is a small world. It's a big world and it's a small world. So I'm very thankful for that insider
we're
information.
A Disney Club, it's a small world after all. For anybody who's been on that ride.
And I know that information is true or has certain merit to it because those players that were mentioned, they are not in the media right now, so nobody's talking about them. So
it'll be
that
super
it's actually
exciting as we go along, and especially from that perspective. And I hope you'll continue to get feedback throughout the season of impressions of how, not just how we're performing, but how we're perceived as a club amongst what are supposed to be our peers. I think that would be really interesting. Like when we had Louis on, he didn't really have a stake in Wrexham in and of itself. And so having that football rich background, him being a Brit, was really interesting for me to hear.
Absolutely. Before I forget, there was I mean, I was just thinking before I forget, there was a story about Puskas because he put on quite a lot of weight pretty much straight after he stopped playing. He had injuries, so he stopped being that active, and he had a big belly, and he didn't look like an ex-athlete at all.
Well, and I remember earned it, man. Eat all the food.
Yeah. So after his professional football players' days were done, he was a coach. I don't remember which team that was exactly, but the story was that the young players, like youngsters, and they were laughing at him because, like, looking at his figure, and they were like, who's this guy and what he's going to teach us. And then one thing led to another, and they had a little challenge, and he just, from halfway mark, he's this guy who is not playing anymore, hadn't been playing in a while, who's been injured. From halfway mark, he hits the ball. The first ball hits the crossbar.
Wow.
So So they were laughing at him. He was like, "Okay, can you do this?" And he just literally one try, one ball from the halfway mark against the
Damn.
crossbar.
Wow. Well, I bet that shut
So
them up, huh?
they shut up straight away. It's like, okay, yep, yeah,
Well, awesome. No, I appreciate, learning some of these names because especially international, my football depth is limited pretty much to Wrexham and, a little bit bleeding into Wales national teams. But yeah, I mean, like you did when you sent me some of those coaches' videos and had to tell me who they were because I had
yep.
no idea.
Yeah. No, it's great that we have the beautiful contribution from the people in the chat. It just brings so many
Yeah, no, you're like
points.
you
Yeah,
said, it's amazing. It is, I guess it is a small world, after all, but that's really cool. All right. Well, let's let you get on with your day and, I'll try to wrap up mine, I suppose. Still haven't
yeah.
come up with
No,
a catchy exit. That can be a
I
summer
have a
project.
I have a big day today. Yeah, I'll tell you all about it later. See how
Ooh,
this goes.
on
Yeah.
that cliffhanger, huh?
Yep. Yeah. So actually I didn't know that so Pushkas moved to Australia. Interesting.
Hmm.
His brother. No. His brother. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. All right. So, but anyway, you see, small world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No kidding. Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Ruby, and hopefully we'll be back sooner rather than later.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. See you later.